narratives of confrontation justify the use of force or minimize violations of international law does not contribute in any way to the purposes of this Council or to the strengthening of multilateralism. On the contrary, it erodes the credibility of the debates and distorts the Security Council's mandate entrusted with the maintenance of international peace and security. Mr. President, on January 3rd, 2020, is a date of profound historical significance, not only for Venezuela, but for the international system as a whole. On that day, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela was the target of an illegitimate armed attack lacking any legal justification by the government of the United States of America, which included bombing of our territory, the loss of civilian and military lives, the destruction of civilian infrastructure, essential infrastructure, and the kidnapping of the constitutional president of the Republic, Nicolas Maduro Moras, and the First Lady Cilia Flores. Venezuela comes before this Council today with a deep conviction that international peace can only be sustained if international law is respected without exception, without double standards, and without selective interpretations. The events of January 3rd constitute a flagrant violation of the UN Charter perpetrated by the US government, in particular, the violation of the principle of sovereign equality of states, of the absolute prohibition of the use or threat of use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, as enshrined in Article 2, Paragraph 4, and a violation of the duty to settle disputes by peaceful means. Similarly, these acts also seriously violate the Geneva Conventions and its protocols, as indiscriminate attacks were carried out against the civilian population and assets. International human rights law has also been violated, particularly the right to life, personal integrity, and security. Of particular seriousness is the kidnapping of the President of the Republic by the government of the United States of America, which constitutes a direct violation of an essential norm of the international legal order, namely the personal immunity of heads of state in office. This immunity is not an individual privilege. It is an institutional guarantee that protects the sovereignty of states and the stability of the international system. Its disregard not only affects Venezuela, but also sets an extremely dangerous precedent for all states represented in this chamber, regardless of their size, power, or alliances. Mr. President, General Assembly Resolution 3314 clearly defines as an act of aggression the bombing of the territory of one state by the armed forces of another state, as well as the invasion or occupation, even without formal annexation. The events we are denouncing here unequivocally fit this definition. In 2004, the International Court of Justice affirmed that occupation exists when a state exercises effective control, even without formal annexation or the continuous presence of troops. Security Council Resolution 242, for its part, emphasizes that the acquisition of territory by force is inadmissible, while General Assembly Resolution 2625 establishes that the territory of a state shall not be subject to military occupation as a result of the use of force in contravention of the UN Charter. Allowing such acts to go without an effective answer would amount to normalizing the replacement of law by might, while eroding the very foundations of the collective security system. Today, it is not only Venezuela's sovereignty that is at stake, the credibility of international law, the authority of this organization, and the validity of the principle that no state can set itself up as a judge, party, and executor of the world order are also at stake. Mr. President, we cannot ignore a central element of this US aggression. Venezuela is the victim of these attacks because of its natural resources. Our country's oil, energy, strategic resources, and geopolitical position have historically been factors of greed and external pressure. When force is used to control resources, impose governments, or redesign states, we are faced with a logic that harks back to the worst practices of colonialism and neocolonialism. Accepting such a logic would mean to open the door to a deeply unstable world in which countries with greater military capacities can decide by force the political and economic destinies of other states. This scenario not only threatens Venezuela, it threatens international peace and security as a whole. If the kidnapping of a head of state, the bombing of a sovereign country, and the open threat of further armed action are tolerated or downplayed, the message sent to the world is a devastating one, namely that the law is optional and that force is the true arbiter of international relations. Venezuela firmly believes in diplomacy, dialogue, and peaceful coexistence among nations. That has always been our historical position, and it remains so today, even in the face of an aggression of this magnitude. It is precisely that commitment to peace, the one that was violated on the 3rd of January. Therefore, Venezuela urges this Security Council to fully assume its responsibility and to act in accordance with the mandate conferred upon it by the Charter of the United Nations. In that regard, we request, A, that the government of the United States of America be demanded to fully respect the immunities of President Nicolas Maduro and First Lady Celia Flores, as well as their immediate release and safe return to Venezuela. 2, that the use of force against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela be clearly and unequivocally condemned. Thirdly, that the principle of non-acquisition of territory or resources by force be reaffirmed. And 4, that measures aimed at de-escalation, the protection of the civilian population, and the restoration of international law be adopted. Mr. President, in spite of the seriousness of the events, Venezuela would like to inform this body and the international community that its institutions are functioning normally, that constitutional order has been preserved, and that the state exercises effective control over all of its territory. In accordance with our constitution, Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez is being sworn in as acting president of the Republic, thereby guaranteeing institutional continuity, stability, and internal peace. We wish to convey a message of serenity, confidence, and hope to the Venezuelan people. Venezuela is a nation that believes in peace, work, and dignity. Our commitment is to diplomacy and law, and the law is firm and unwavering. We defend our sovereignty without renouncing our values. We bet on dialogue without accepting imposition. We believe in a future of coexistence, development, and mutual respect among nations. We trust that this Security Council will rise to the historic moment facing humanity and choose the path of legality, collective responsibility, and peace. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and now give the floor to the representative of Argentina.
Buenos días. Good morning, and thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, the government of the Argentine Republic values the decision and determination demonstrated by the President of the United States of America and by his government in the recent actions taken in Venezuela that resulted in the capture of the dictator Nicolas Maduro, leader of the Cartel of the Suns, declared a terrorist organization by Argentina in 2025, the same year in which Argentina also declared the Tren de Aragua a terrorist organization. The Argentine Republic trusts that these events represent a decisive step forward against terrorism that affects the region, and at the same time open a stage that will allow the Venezuelan people to fully recover democracy, the rule of law, and respect for human rights in accordance with the principles of international law, and put an end to the oppression exercised for years by the authoritarian regime that plunged the Venezuelan people into poverty and forced 8 million Venezuelans to have to flee their country. Mr. President, the illegitimate regime of Nicolas Maduro has not only constituted a direct threat to Venezuelan citizens through the systematic violation of human rights, the appropriation of the country's resources, and the destruction of democratic institutions, but also to the entire region by leading and exporting its networks of drug trafficking and organized crime. Since the inauguration of President Javier Milei, Argentina has been clear and consistent in its position regarding this situation. We have unequivocally denounced the lack of freedoms and the serious human rights violations, and we have actively contributed with the determination and responsibility to international efforts aimed at the return of democracy in Venezuela. In March 2024, when others opted for inaction or ambiguity, Argentina granted diplomatic asylum to 6 Venezuelan opposition leaders, assuming an enormous challenge for our representation in Caracas. Subsequently, after denouncing the fraudulent nature of the result announced in the 28 July 2024 elections and recognizing Edmundo González Urrutia as president-elect, Argentina was expelled from Venezuela. Our embassy, where the asylum seekers remained, was subject to a permanent siege. Despite these pressures, the Argentine Republic maintained its unwavering conviction to continue denouncing the situation in Venezuela and to act in every available international forum so that Venezuela could once again embrace freedom and democracy. Mr. President, this is not the first time that Argentina has addressed this Security Council regarding the situation in Venezuela. On the 23rd of December last, we expressed our deep concern over institutional and humanitarian deteriorating situation, noting the effects of the illegitimate regime of Nicolas Maduro transcended the domestic sphere and negatively affected regional stability, constituting a concrete threat to hemispheric security. In the same vein, President Milei stated at the Mercosur summit that Argentina welcomed the pressure from the United States aimed at freeing the Venezuelan people. Today, the international community faces a new scenario that poses a dual challenge: to support a genuine democratic transition in Venezuela and to contribute to the lasting restoration of peace and security in our region. Faced with both challenges, the Argentine Republic stands ready and willing to cooperate. We reaffirm our firm commitment to the full restoration of institutional normalcy and the rule of law in Venezuela, always safeguarding the freedom, human dignity, and prosperity of the brotherly Venezuelan people, as well as our determination to continue fighting against the scourge of narco-terrorism and those who contribute to its financing. The process that begins today requires the firm and coordinated commitment of all those countries that have accompanied the Venezuelan people in their long struggle, so that Venezuela can leave behind more than 2 decades of political, humanitarian, and social crisis, and can finally be reunited with freedom, democracy, respect for human rights, and economic prosperity. Mr. President, finally, the Argentine Republic requests that the authorities responsible for administering the transition in Venezuela contribute to the immediate release of the Argentine citizen Nahuel Gallo, who has been in a situation of enforced disappearance since the 8th of December 2024, in clear violation of his human rights, and that his prompt and safe return to our country be guaranteed. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Argentina and now give the floor to the representative of Chile.
Gracias.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chile would like to thank Somalia for convening this informational briefing under the item Threats to International Peace and Security. We'd also like to thank Madam Rosemary DiCarlo, USG for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, as well as the briefings from Mr. Jeffrey Sachs and Ms. Mercedes de Freitas. President, Chile would like to express our deep concern and firm condemnation of the unilateral military action taken by the United States in the territory of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. We also reiterate consistently our firm commitment to respect for international law, sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, and the peaceful settlement of disputes, the prohibition of the threat or the use of the threat of force, and full respect for human rights. These affirmations are accepted by the majority, and they must maintain their importance in order to preserve international peace and security. We said this on the 23rd of December when we took the floor, and we reiterate this today. Chile does not recognize the Maduro regime, but serious violations of human rights being faced by Venezuela do not have a military solution. They can only be addressed through peaceful, gradual, and inclusive measures that will take into account the legitimate aspirations of the Venezuelan people. Respect for international law does not allow for exceptions, including when it comes to addressing the illegitimacy of a president. Problems must always be solved within the normative framework that we have provided for ourselves as nations. The future of Venezuela must include free elections, citizen participation, and international assistance, and not with actions that could create dangerous precedents or escalate tensions in the region with serious consequences for the population. Chile, as a witness of history and based on our own experience with the loss of democracy, where there was foreign interference that caused extreme damage and pain for the Chilean people. We were able to recover our democracy through a transitional process that was carried out with the assistance of the international community, the strength of organized citizens, and through our institutions. Mr. President, Chile would like also to underscore the urgent need to continue with coordinated efforts multilaterally to address transnational organized crime. And we're also convinced that Latin America and the Caribbean must continue to be a zone of peace, because that zone of peace not only serves Latin America and the Caribbean, but the entire world. An armed conflict will have devastating humanitarian consequences in Venezuela and in the region. It will worsen the suffering of the civilian population and worsen even further the displacement, insecurity, and vulnerability aspects of the situation. We reiterate that any differences must be dealt with exclusively through peaceful means in strict respect for international law, the sovereignty of states, and the prohibition of the use or the threat of the use of force. As was indicated by the heads of state of Brazil, Chile, Mexico, Uruguay, and Spain, we express our concern with regard to any attempt to control government administration or foreign ownership of strategic assets. This will be against international law and would threaten the political, economic, and social stability of the region. Mr. President, given this complex scenario, Chile welcomes the role that could be played by multilateral fora. And here, particularly, we would refer to the role of the United Nations, and particularly the role that could be played by the Secretary General and by this Council, with the consent of the parties involved to contribute to de-escalating the situation and searching for an understanding that would favor a peaceful and lasting exit to the crisis. Prudent leadership and experience of our organization, as well as the regional organizations and mechanisms, could be very relevant to avoid a further worsening of the situation and to keep open the channels of communication. Chile reiterates its preparedness to support constructive initiatives that will point in this direction and work together with countries of the region and with the international community for stability and mutual understanding and respect for the principles that underpin this organization. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Chile for the statement and now give the floor to representatives of Brazil.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. President, we'd like to thank Somalia for convening this emergency session of the Security Council. Brazil categorically and firmly rejects the armed intervention in Venezuelan territory in flagrant violation of the Charter of the United Nations and of international law. The bombings on Venezuelan territory and the capture of its president cross an unacceptable line. These acts constitute a very serious affront to the sovereignty of Venezuela and set an extremely dangerous precedent for the entire international community. The Charter of the United Nations establishes as a pillar of the international order the prohibition of the use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, except in the circumstances strictly provided for therein. The acceptance of actions of this nature would inexorably lead to a scenario marked by violence, disorder, and the erosion of multilateralism to the detriment of international law and institutions. The effects of the weakening of international governance and cooperation mechanisms are already evident. The record number since the Second World War of 61 active armed conflicts, the unprecedented figure of 117 million people in situations of humanitarian disaster around the world, reflecting the increase in wars, displacement, and crimes against humanity, such as the genocide in Gaza, and the global increase in military spending, which is approaching the historical mark of $2.7 trillion. As Brazil has reiterated on numerous occasions, the norms that govern coexistence among states are mandatory and universal. They do not admit exceptions based on ideological, geopolitical, political, economic, or any other kind of interests or projects. They do not admit that the exploitation of natural or economic resources justifies the use of force or the illegal change of a government. The multipolar world of the 21st century, which promotes peace and prosperity, must not be confused with spheres of influence. We cannot accept the argument that the end justifies the means. This reasoning lacks legitimacy and opens the possibility of granting the strongest the right to define what is just or unjust, what is right or wrong, and even to ignore national sovereignties, imposing the decisions to be taken by the weakest. Latin America and the Caribbean have made peace a conscious, lasting, and irreversible choice. The resort to force in our region evokes chapters of history that we believed we'd left behind us and endangers the collective effort to preserve the region as a zone of peace and cooperation, free of armed conflicts, respectful of international law and the principle of non-intervention. Armed interventions in the past had profoundly negative and lasting consequences. Contrary to freedom and democracy, those interventions produced authoritarian regimes and serious violations of human rights, leaving as a lamentable result thousands of dead, political prisoners, tortured persons, and disappeared persons whose families still today search for their loved ones, as well as justice and reparation. For the first time in South America, a profoundly alarming event has occurred. An external armed aggression with the deployment of troops and bombings in a neighboring country contiguous with Brazil, with which we share more than 2,000 kilometers of border. Mr. President, South America is a zone of peace. I insist upon that. We have upheld and will uphold with full determination peace and non-intervention in our region. Furthermore, Brazil does not believe that the solution to the situation in Venezuela lies in the creation of protectorates in the country, but rather in solutions that respect the self-determination of the Venezuelan people within the framework of its constitution. The events of January 3rd transcend the regional sphere. The attack on the sovereignty of any country, regardless of the direction of its government, affects the entire international community. This and other cases of armed intervention against the sovereignty of a country, its territorial integrity, or its institutions must be vehemently condemned. It is up to this Council to assume its responsibility and react with determination, clarity, and obedience to international law in order to prevent the law of force from prevailing over the force of law. Brazil trusts that the future of Venezuela will be built by the Venezuelan people through dialogue, without external interference, and within the framework of international law. Thank you.
For Brazil, for the statement, and now give the floor to the representative of Mexico.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. President, thank you for having convened this emergency meeting of the Council. The government of Mexico has already made its position clear with regard to our condemnation of the military aggression of January 3rd against targets in the territory of Venezuela, in clear violation of Article 2 of the Charter of the United Nations. These actions must not be allowed, as they constitute a severe blow to the Charter and to multilateralism. Mexico would like to clarify the following points. 4 points. Number one, the prohibition of the threat or the use of force against the sovereignty, territorial integrity, or political independence of any state is the foundation of international law, regardless of the country or the government involved. 2, rhetoric pointing towards the escalation or expansion of military actions, including to other countries in our region, threatens regional stability. 3, the Security Council has the responsibility and, above all, it has the obligation to act decisively and without double standards in the face of serious violations of the Charter, and to restore international peace and security in strict adherence to the provisions of Article 24 and observing Article 27.3. 4. It is for sovereign peoples to decide their destiny and to find peaceful, democratic, and negotiated solutions to their political differences within a framework of unrestricted respect for human rights. Regime change by external actors and the application of extraterritorial measures are not only acts contrary to international law, but historically, all they've done is exacerbate conflicts and weakened the social and political fabric of nations. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, despite the political differences among our governments, Latin America and the Caribbean has been forged as a zone of peace.
All right, switched it off. We have a court hearing. I'm going to discuss what's going on, also share outside. That is the UN Security Council. We definitely were listening in, and we'll review that when it's done. But I do want to take us to outside the federal courthouse. There's a large group of people out there, both for and against Maduro, and it's getting feisty out there. It's getting feisty out there, and I want to kind of share what's going on and kind of talk a little bit about reviewing about his court hearing. So we haven't forgot about Maduro in court. That's what we started out with. So let's have a conversation. Let's talk about what's transpiring. He is in court right now, federal court here, 500 Pearl Street. He's in there. Inner City Press, which is a pretty decent independent journalist. I think he does the best work as far as court hearings inside inside the the courts there in New York, said about 15 minutes ago. So we're just going to review. I'm just going to go through what has been transpiring here. Heavy security out there. So he came in at 12:01, exactly 12:01. He comes in. He's brought in by U.S. Marshals in a blue prison shirt, orange undershirt. Cecilia Flores dressed the same, each with their own lawyer. Okay, so that's interesting too. They both now have their own lawyer. He's brought in. His wife is brought in. They both have lawyers. That's interesting. They both have lawyers. I'm gonna put this photo up here when he was taken in earlier. All right. So basically, is the judge Alvin Hellerstein. The judge is Alvin Hellerstein. You can't see me behind all this equipment. Counsel introduces himself. AUSA Wishba. The AUSA is Wishba, the two defense attorneys. Judge Hellerstein. I am Alvin Hellerstein. I am the U.S. District Judge assigned to this case. It is my job to assure a fair trial. Goes on to say, we'll start out by summarizing the indictment. Judge, Mr. Maduro, you are charged with narco-terrorism, providing something of value to one or more persons involved in terrorist activity. In count 2, Mr. Maduro and Ms. Flores are charged with cocaine, importing cocaine conspiracy. Count 3 involves firearms, including machine guns or destructive devices. Finally, count 4, they are charged with conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices. Goes on to say, the judge, are you Nicolas Maduro Moros? Maduro says in Spanish, here he goes, I am the president of Venezuela. I consider myself a prisoner of war. I was captured at my home in Caracas. Oh boy. Wow. So the judge goes, let me intervene. There will be time for this. The judge, I only want to know, are you Nicolas Maduro Moros? Maduro says, yes. The judge, have you been served the indictment? Defense lawyer, we waive public reading. Maduro, I have it in my hands for the first time. I prefer to read it personally. Judge, anything you say may be used against you. I see you have counsel. We're going to try to find out the counsel's name. Okay. Mr. Pollock here, if you cannot afford one, the government will provide a lawyer free of charge. Did you know these rights? Maduro, I did not know of these rights until now. The judge, how do you plead? I am innocent. I am a decent man. I am the president of Venezuela. The defense lawyer says it is a plea of not guilty to all counts. Judge, Bridget, I guess his courtroom deputy, she will arraign you. Going on. Deputy, have you seen the indictment? Maduro says, seen, but I did not read it. Deputy, have you discussed it with your lawyer? Maduro says, partially. Deputy, how do you plead? Maduro goes on to say again, I am innocent. I am not guilty of anything that is mentioned here. Judge then goes, are you Cecilia Flores, the Maduro? Cecilia Flores says, I am the First Lady of the Republic of Venezuela. Judge, you heard about the indictment from me? Cecilia Flores says, yes. You have two lawyers with you. Did you discuss it with them? Judge, yes. Judge asks Cecilia Flores, how do you plead? She goes, I am completely innocent. Judge, pleas of not guilty will be entered. Mr. Wishbaugh, what was the date and time of arrest? Wishbaugh, AUSA, the AUSA Wishbaugh. They were arrested at 11 p.m. on January 2nd and transferred to SDNY at 4:31 p.m. on January 3rd. AUSA. I would like to note that the defendants have a right to consular notification, though not mandatory. The consul. Judge, thank you. Do you understand, Mr. Maduro? Yes. We would like to have consular visit. Cecilia, the grammar's a little bit off here. I would like to see the consul. Cecilia and Maduro says they would like to see they would like to speak to the consul. Judge, Mr. Wishbaum, will you arrange that? AUSA, we will look into it. Judge says, and inform me. The 5F order, AUSA says, Judge, I'll do it. The government has a duty to produce discovery. I'll enter a written order. All right, that's where we're at currently. That's where, he pretty much said, I am Nicolas Maduro. I am an innocent man. I am the president of Venezuela. I am innocent of all charges. He also called himself a prisoner of war. I'm a prisoner of war. Holy smokes, this is crazy. This is crazy. Drop the volume a little bit for details about what's going on in the court. I'm a prisoner of war. I'm also going to look for sketches and all that. We'll see what we can get out of this whole situation, because I am a prisoner of war. So I'm going to wait for the updates from the inner city press who's inside the courtroom and anyone else that's in there. So they're all, it's probably going to end here soon, shortly. Wow. Crazy. The feed's getting a little choppy here because I think there's massive amount of people out there. There has been some fights outside the courthouse between look, everyone's leaving. So that's an indication the court hearing is over. You see the people coming out? I'll take this down. So what we might see at this point, this court hearing could be over because I'm going to look at Fox New York, because I just saw people coming and exiting the courthouse here. Here, I got a different angle. I got a better, kind of more clearer view here. I'm going to switch this over to here and see. So, it's quick and easy, but the thing about it is what we learned. One, we have to find out who Maduro's attorneys are. And two, we have to find out a couple things, their names. We have to find out the names of the attorneys. Both of them seem like they have representation. There's crowds out there. This is out in front of the courthouse here. So we were listening to the UN Security Council kind of like fill in, because I think that's also important too. Though this UN Security Council, you've seen all sides of the situation. Some condemn this, some in support of the United States, some just playing defense, both sides of the fence, but basically saying, moving forward, we want more dialogue and whatnot, different nations or whatnot. It is interesting, for sure. It's interesting. So Maduro in New York, he's in court right now. We're also going to watch probably his convoy leave here soon, and they'll probably follow it. We'll follow it. We'll find a feed. We'll definitely find a feed and follow this situation. But it appears it could be over. We're waiting for more information. I'm gonna turn on the Fox play-by-play.
To the Fox journalist in the overflow room, it says that it is hard to hear what it is being said, saying, quote, it was an ostentatious statement, had the feel of a judge speaking to the world at large, the world behind the courtroom. So that is a quote from Fox News. The reporter also describing the judge's voice as forceful and gravelly. And just to give you a perspective, since no cameras are allowed inside, it says that Maduro is seated at the defendant's table, flanked by counsel, standing at the judge's instruction, and that Maduro was writing on a legal pad as the judge read the charges. Now, the judge is not on camera, and he started out with a statement that he is there to ensure a fair trial for this defendant. According to Fox News, Maduro walked into the courtroom wearing a black T-shirt saying that he, quote, towers over his counsel, also saying that he is uncuffed, his hands are free, he has headphones on for the translation, and then sat immediately to start writing on a legal pad. So it also described that black T-shirt as being worn over an orange prison top. The judge reading those charges out. So no cameras are allowed inside this courthouse, as you see a live look outside. However, the media is allowed to watch via courtroom monitors in an overflow room. So we did want to share that with you, as Maduro has pleaded innocent, saying that he is, quote, a decent man, the president of my country, repeatedly asserting that he is still the leader of Venezuela. We continue our breaking news coverage with our Fox 5 New York team as we dip into that.
Live from outside the courthouse. Lisa, it really just seems like utter chaos down there. What kind of things have developed since we spoke to you last, which was just about a half hour ago?
Well, the most important thing is that this arraignment seems to be moving along at a fairly quick pace from sources inside the courtroom. We are hearing that both Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores de Maduro, have both pleaded not guilty to these charges. Maduro speaking in Spanish inside the courtroom through a translator, very hard for observers in the courtroom to hear what was being said. At one point, he started to expound at length. The judge said to him, listen, there'll be plenty of time to explain your whole story and all these other things, and to expound and make speeches later on in the course of these proceedings. So what we're working on now is trying to find out their representation. It appears both of them have lawyers, and let's bring in right now top criminal defense attorney Arthur Aidala to get a handle on what's going on right now. Arthur, where do you think we are with this?
Well, I think they're just about, from reports inside the courtroom, they're just about to get into what the evidence is and how much evidence there is against them. Right now, they've done all the procedural necessary things. He was asked, Mr. Maduro, when was the arrest taking place? And they said he went into police custody January 3rd at 11:30 a.m. So right now it's a lot of checking off the boxes. What was interesting is they asked him, did you get a chance to read the indictment? And he said no. Now, normally when you go into that courthouse, the marshals give you, the lawyer, the criminal defense attorney, time to go over the indictment with the client, because they know the judge is going to say, have you read the indictment?
Even if you don't have a lawyer, they give you one of the court people.
Exactly, give you a court-assigned lawyer. I don't exactly know who Barry Pollock is. He's the attorney who's representing him. Barry Pollock is not seeking any bail at this time, but that he may later on. That just happened.
Is that typical for a case like this?
Absolutely. It is absolutely typical in a case like this. The chances, first of all, of the judge allowing them to go is very, very, very remote. So it would be just a waste of everybody's time. Basically, the next thing is just when the court's going to tell them to prosecutor, when I want you to turn over all the evidence, and then when I want to see everybody back. And in the meantime, the defense attorney will have some kind of opportunity now to meet with his client or their respective clients, because there's a lot of lawyers now and a lot of defendants. As I said, they both said not guilty. Maduro wanted to say more.
Right.
He said, I was kidnapped, I'm an innocent man, and the judge said there'll be plenty of time for that.
Right.
Right now, I just need to know, are you Mr. Maduro? He said, yes, and I'm an innocent man.
And then in terms of the co-defendants, when do they get arraigned, or how does that happen?
I mean, his wife's happening. They usually do them one right after the other. Sometimes when there's too many, they don't put them all in the courtroom at the same time. Because of security purposes. Correct. Exactly, for the security purposes. But they'll probably do it one right after the other.
Okay, now we looked at, which you saw also this superseding indictment that named Maduro, Celia Flores' wife, the son, the alleged Tren de Aragua head, two other guys in this indictment. It looked fairly recent. There was no date on it. There was a superseding
that's the thing.
indictment.
There is no date on it, so you don't know exactly when that happened. He may have been indicted in June, or he may.
And we're just finding out about it now.
Correct.
But would they have? Would the
My understanding, what the reporting is that President Trump has been trying to, with very favorable terms, tell him leave office. We'll rip up all the warrant against you. Just disappear, and we'll leave you alone, and we'll give you full immunity, etc. And apparently, that's been going on for since Trump took office, but they had plans. They had the plan B, and reporting is that once President Trump saw Maduro doing some dancing thing during Christmas week, he's like, okay, this guy's not taking us seriously.
Right.
He thinks we're bluffing, and we have to show them that we're not bluffing, and here we are.
So, would the prosecutors have had to present evidence to this superseding indictment? Is that a whole new grand jury?
Well,
We don't know.
Usually it's not.
Okay.
Usually there's a grand jury that sits for a long period of time.
Oh, okay.
The lawyer notes that he may file motions concerning Maduro's role as head of a sovereign state, and ending that there are questions about the legality of his military abduction. So the criminal defense attorney just now, it's being reported, said to the judge, I'm going to put in a motion about the fact that he's the head of a sovereign state, and under international law, he's not supposed to be seized. But Lisa, the rule is in America, based on the Noriega case from the late 80s, early 90s, is that even if he's seized illegally, if he gets convicted here, the conviction stands and the jail term stands. Basically, we just get a slap on the wrist for saying, hey, you shouldn't have grabbed him that way. But even though you grabbed him the wrong way, he's still going to face charges, and if he's convicted, he's still going to go to jail.
Now, how different is this from what we would say, what we would consider a drug kingpin there's a warrant issued for his arrest, there's an indictment, there's a warrant issued for his arrest, they send the U.S. Marshals to go hunt them down. Is this like that times 100?
Right, because when the drug kingpins get arrested, there's not miles and miles of security and protesters. And to me, Lisa, it seems like most people from Venezuela who was here, I was speaking to and listening to, they're very happy about this. They're excited to go back to their country, and they're kind of cheering on this prosecution, which is kind of interesting from their point of view. But it seems like Judge Hellerstein is just conducting things. I mean, he's done this thousands of times, and I don't know if I'm exaggerating when I say thousands of times. He's been on the bench since President Clinton.
Wow.
In a minute or two, we're gonna find out what an adjourned date is.
Right.
When they're gonna find out when to come back to court, how much evidence there is against him, when the evidence has to be presented to the defense attorneys, and how much time they need to make motions.
Is it possible at all to separate the politics from this as a criminal case?
Judge says he will see everyone in court on St. Patrick's Day. We'll be spending St. Patty's Day together, Lisa. March 17th, and now the defendants are being let out. So it's over. The arraignment is officially over. They'll be back on St. Patty's Day. And in the meantime, the prosecutors are tasked with turning over evidence to the defense attorneys, and they have to look at what's legal, what's illegal, what they're going to try to push back that the jury should never see. And obviously, his defense attorney is going to make a motion about the way he was seized and the fact that he's head of a sovereign state. He shouldn't be here anyway.
So since there was no bail application at this particular hearing,
They're entitled to do that at any time.
but do they go back to MDC or can they?
Oh, no. They're going to MDC. I mean, they're going unless there's some absolutely unique
Medical thing
circumstance
or something like
they're
that,
going,
right?
Yeah, they're going back to MDC, and they'll have special housing. They'll be very separated from everybody. That's the way they'll keep them safe. The way they keep people safe is they just keep them alone, which for someone like him who's used to having a phone and a TV and people around him,
In and out.
all of a sudden to be sitting there all alone for days and weeks on end, trust me, it is mentally, it's a severe punishment.
So we're going to be down here a lot.
Well, we're going to celebrate St. Patty's Day. I'm wearing a green hat. I must have known we're coming back for St. Patty's Day.
Is there any conceivable way or reason that they could be granted bail?
I don't see that happening based on my experience. I mean, look, Puff Daddy put up, what, $50 million, house arrest, nothing in the house, 24 guards, no phone, no internet, and they still didn't let him out. So I don't see that happening.
With the federal court.
I do not see Judge Hellerstein giving bail here.
And this judge, again, we talked about him a little bit earlier, but just to remind everybody, you said he's like he's a straight shooter, right?
He's 92 years old, and he started off the remarks saying, I'm here to make sure everything gets treated fairly and everyone's rights are protected. As a matter of fact, Maduro said, Judge, I want to make sure I can keep my notes. And he said, yes, you can keep your notes. So, no one's gonna bully Judge Hellerstein around that, I can tell you.
So now will the lawyers, okay, so the arraignment is close to being over.
They just said he's out. They said the defendants are led out of the courtroom.
Okay, so then they'll now go back to MDC. The lawyers might talk with them for a little while. And then
Usually what typically would happen is you could go to another floor where they're housed in a jail and you talk to them through this like little screen, which makes your eyes blurry, and you're in a private room and you get to chat with them and then they take you back to the MDC.
All right, Arthur Aidala, top criminal defense attorney, thank you so much for being with us. So the arraignment is essentially over, and both Maduro and his wife we're hearing the helicopters coming out right now, will be heading back to MDC tonight. No bail application was made at this time. That may happen in the future. We're live in Lower Manhattan. I'm Lisa Evers, Fox 5 News. Back to you in the studio.
Hey, Lisa, before we...
All right, and we do thank our Fox 5 New York team for that coverage as you're taking a live look outside of the federal courthouse as Maduro and his wife have pled not guilty to the 4 federal charges against him. And we now know that Maduro will make his next court appearance on March 17th, as the government attorney is saying that the hearing is over. We're just getting this in. The court proceedings ended at 12:31 p.m. Eastern time after the attorney on behalf of Maduro's wife, Celia Flores, said that his client sustained, quote, health and medical issues that will require attention. Her attorney said that Flores, who is 69 years old, may have a fracture or severe bruising on her ribs and may need a full x-ray. So that is according to the very latest information from the Associated Press. Both Maduro and Flores have agreed to remain detained for now. Their attorneys could revisit a bail application at a later date. So they were officially taken into law enforcement custody at 11:30 a.m. Saturday, that their plane landed in New York at 4:31 p.m. that very same day. So the very latest information as the prosecutor laid out the custody timeline before Maduro and his wife were led out of the court. So we are continuing to follow that. And we also wanted to share just a little bit more information as you're joining us at this hour as we continue to follow the very latest developments. This is the latest information there on the left-hand side of your screen as you're taking a live look here outside of the federal courthouse. President Trump saying that the United States will run Venezuela after Maduro and his wife were captured. The U.S. carrying out the large-scale military strike in Venezuela over the weekend, and Maduro now facing narco-terrorism and weapons charges. A live look outside of the federal courthouse as there remains a very heavy police presence. This, as the arraignment has concluded, Maduro telling the judge, quote, I was captured and that I am a decent man, the president of my country. The lawyer saying that the Maduro's plead not guilty on all charges, and Maduro repeatedly asserting that he is still the leader of Venezuela. His wife, Celia Flores, also repeatedly saying in Spanish and then through her interpreter saying, I am the first lady of the Republic of Venezuela. When she was asked to enter a plea, she responded not guilty, completely innocent. So Maduro did tell the judge that he had not yet read the indictment against him and had not been informed of his rights, saying through his interpreter, quote, I did not know of these rights. Your Honor is informing me of them right now. The judge responded to Maduro saying that a plea of not guilty will be entered on behalf of Maduro, and Maduro, a second time when asked for his plea, said, quote, "I am innocent. I am not guilty of anything that is mentioned here." So we are going to continue to follow all of the breaking news developments. We do know that the next court appearance for Maduro will be March 17th at this federal courthouse as we continue to follow this breaking news. So the arraignment has now concluded. The lawyers have exited. Maduro repeatedly maintaining his innocence, pleading not guilty to all of the charges against him, and repeatedly asserting that he is still the leader of Venezuela. His wife, Celia Flores, who also appeared before the judge during this arraignment, also asserted her role as Venezuela's first lady. The prosecutors outlining the custody timeline, stating that Maduro and Flores were officially taken into law enforcement custody at 11:30 a.m. on Saturday, and that their plane landed in New York at 4:31 p.m. that very same day. So we are continuing to follow this, as we do know that Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores have pleaded not guilty on all charges against him. Maduro telling the judge, quote, "I am a decent man, the president of my country," and the judge then indicating that he will next appear in court on March 17th. Any additional information, we will bring that to you as Maduro and his wife.
All right, so his wife and him both have different lawyers. This is interesting. So Maduro's lawyer is a guy by the name of Barry Pollock, who represents, this is crazy, his lawyer, Maduro has a lawyer out of Washington, D.C. named Barry Pollock, who represents Julian Assange. You know WikiLeaks, Julian Assange? Julian Assange is an attorney, is Barry Pollock. And that is, now he's representing Maduro. Maduro's wife is being represented by a man named Mark Donnelly of Parker Sanchez and Donnelly, which is out of Houston, Texas. So they both got separate attorneys. So Cecilia Flores is represented by Mark Donnelly, and he's being represented, Maduro, by Barry Pollock. Interesting. So interesting.
Levied against him, Maduro telling the judge, "I am a decent man, the president of my country," and Maduro will now appear in court on March 17th. Meanwhile, we also wanted to share a look with you. This is a protest that continues to get underway right here outside of the federal courthouse, and we have been seeing ever since the capture of Maduro and his wife celebrations as well as protests. So this is what appears to be at least part of a protest here, saying stop illegal war in Venezuela. And we were hearing from Fox multimedia reporter Kaylee Schuyler, who is outside the federal courthouse, describing the scene, saying that it's been chaotic, that there have been interactions between police and some of these protesters right here, as we wanted to share that with you. So we continue to follow the breaking news at this hour, as Maduro and his wife have pleaded not guilty to federal charges. A live look outside in New York City as we continue to follow the very latest. We've also been hearing from the United States, Venezuela itself, and other countries from the United Nations, as they are right now holding an emergency session in New York City to discuss the ongoing situation that is happening there in Venezuela. A live look there outside of the federal courthouse as protesters continue to gather. And we do see that there are metal barricades there to prevent the overflow and the overspill of these protesters. As we also have a live look outside of the courthouse itself that I'm going to pull up right now, and there remains a very heavy police presence as they want to maintain peace after the court has adjourned a very brief arraignment for Maduro and his wife, as they have pleaded not guilty to the federal charges against them. Now, the next court appearance will be on March 17th. That is when Maduro is set to appear next in court. He has pleaded not guilty to all of the charges. And the judge interrupting Maduro at one point after Maduro was explaining that he was captured and detained. He says that he wanted to go on. That's when the judge interrupted him, saying that there would be time later on to argue his case, but not right now. Maduro and his wife wearing headphones as they were listening to translation. Maduro speaking in Spanish to the judge as an off-screen voice translated. And we were hearing from Fox 5 New York stating that it was hard to hear exactly what was being said. The volume wasn't the best. But according to Fox News, there was a sense that the judge, when he was speaking to the world at large, meaning the world behind the courtroom. Maduro was seated at the defendant's table, flanked by counsel, standing at the judge's instruction, writing on a legal pad as the judge read the charges. The judge starting out with a statement that he was there to ensure a fair trial for the defendant. Maduro, when he entered into the courtroom, was wearing a black T-shirt over his orange prison garb. And Fox News describing the scene as Maduro towering over his counsel. He was uncuffed, his hands were free, and he did have his headphones on for the translation, sitting immediately flanked by his counsel. And then he started writing on a legal pad as the judge read out the charges against him. Maduro pleading not guilty, saying that he is innocent on all of the charges, and repeatedly stating that he is the leader of Venezuela. His wife, Celia Flores, also, when she appeared before the judge, asserting her role, she says, as Venezuela's First Lady. So we will expect to see Maduro next time in court on March 17th. As we've been hearing from legal analysts, this will likely be a lengthy legal process, as there is a lot of evidence that will be presented in court. Maduro and Flores right now do have attorneys as they are continuing on. And now that the hearing is over, according to the Associated Press, the attorney Mark Donnelly, who is the attorney representing Celia Flores, told the judge that his client sustained, quote, health and medical issues that will require attention, saying that she might have a fracture or severe bruising on her ribs and may need a full X-ray. Both Maduro and Flores have agreed to remain detained for now, although their attorneys could revisit a bail application at a later date. A live look there outside of the federal courthouse as we continue to follow all of these developments. We are going to just step away for a moment, but continuing our coverage after that. Stay with us.
All right, hold on a second. Let me get, I'm going to go back to NBC News here, or ABC News actually has a insight of what happened in the courtroom. So I'm going to get this up here, and we're going to listen in and listen in to see exactly what's going on with this. Stay with me. We're going to get a more understanding of what happened inside the courtroom here.
Yeah, well, Diane, this was a brief hearing today here in federal court behind us. We know that Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, they were listening in on the hearing through headphones, listening through a translator, and they also spoke through an interpreter as well. And Nicolas Maduro said, I'm an innocent man. He pleaded not guilty. He said, I am the president of Venezuela. I am still the president of Venezuela. His wife pleaded not guilty as well. They both did not ask for bail, so they will be taken right back to the MDC in Brooklyn, where they came from this morning. And Diane, it seems like they really had a lot to say. They wanted to speak, but the judge sort of cut them off and said this hearing today will be brief. So Diane, for now, the next court date has been scheduled for March 17th.
And let's bring in Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Kaczorski, who is inside that courtroom. Aaron, tell us what you saw.
Nicolas Maduro walked into a silent courtroom wearing beige pants, a black smock over an orange T-shirt, orange jail slippers on his feet, and he was shackled as he was led to the defense table. The U.S. Marshals had already flipped over the chair to inspect it. He took his seat and almost immediately began scribbling notes. And at the end of the proceeding, he wanted to make sure he could keep them. The judge said that he could. His wife was not far behind him, Celia Flores, wearing a very similar outfit, kept her hands folded on the defense table. And the proceeding was relatively quick, meant to not only read the couple their rights, but also to take pleas. And Nicolas Maduro and his wife each entered not guilty pleas, but they did so in rather dramatic fashion. Nicolas Maduro declaring Diane, I am innocent, I am not guilty, I am a decent man, I am still president of my country. Judge Alvin Hellerstein at that point cut him off, said there would be time for him to challenge the circumstances of his detention and his capture, but he simply wanted to find out what his plea was to this 4-count indictment that accuses Maduro of leading a 25-year narco-terrorism conspiracy.
And ABC News legal analyst Brian Buckmeyer is here with some analysis on this. Brian, Maduro and Flores didn't request bail. What does that tell you, and what happens to them now as they await trial?
So when it comes to requesting bail, at least in this concept, I think it falls into two different theories. The first being, some might hear this oftentimes, you want to measure twice, cut once. And what I mean by that is, think of the context of Barry Pollock meeting his now client, Maduro. He just met him a few, maybe minutes, hours ago. There's not enough time, at least in his eyes, to have an interview with his client, see what resources that can be put together to create a bail package that he believes the judge might entertain to some degree. Yes, are we all saying bail is a long shot? Absolutely, but if you're going to make that long shot, you do it as best as you can. The other issue is the standards and arguments for setting bail the first time and then trying to get another judge to change a previous judge's ruling on bail is slightly different. You don't want to be in a position where you're going to a second judge and saying, hey, the first judge made a mistake at setting bail. Here's why the first judge made a mistake. And here's additional information. It's a second hill to climb and that much harder. You try to get it right the first time.
And let's go to senior political correspondent Rachel Scott at the White House. Rachel, Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, is calling for dialogue now with the U.S. after initially calling this operation an atrocity. So what's the latest there on those conversations?
And say, look, this is an enormous amount of taxpayer dollars, and it is, that's being used to do this. It's just that in order to get him safely there without having an incident and disrupting this whole judicial process, having any civilians injured, any members of the public, they want to be able to get him to a spot where they can just fly him to Brooklyn. You might remember in previous high-profile proceedings, I'm thinking of El Chapo, when he was tried in New York, and other cases, they want to make sure that there's no members of the public that are injured. And to do that, they'd have to shut down the Brooklyn Bridge or other major arteries in New York City. And that's just something that becomes untenable. So it's easier to fly them. And all indications are at this point, we'll know fairly shortly here, because they have an opportunity either to get on the bridge or to get to the heliport. They will likely go to the heliport. This is right behind the entrance to NYPD's headquarters, as well as the federal courts downtown. And this is going to be an effort by the marshals, by the DEA, in order to get them there. And at this point, it looks like they are making the turn to get down to the heliport. That's at least where it looks like to be where they're going to head.
And that is presumably, Tom, where we will see another image of Maduro in person being walked back into the helicopter. We saw the earlier one just after sunrise, very early this morning, as Maduro was being taken out. Again, aware of the camera angles, candidly, aware of his visibility, aware that he was being watched by people around the world. And I want to bring back in Sam Brock to the conversation, because, Sam, I understand that in just the last maybe 2-3 minutes here, we have heard now from Maduro's defense attorney for the first time outside court.
Yeah, so Jonathan Deans, our colleague at WNBC, apparently just spoke with Barry Pollock outside of court and asked him about comments that were asserted that he was abducted when Maduro said he was abducted by the U.S. government. And Pollock said something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing here, of what Mr. Maduro said in court speaks for itself. And that is part of the conversation that's going to be ensuing here in the coming weeks and months, Ali, is the idea of using force in an international relations capacity like that, which is explicitly prohibited unless it's in defense of a country or it's sanctioned by the United Nations. And so what he meant in terms of the use of the word abduction is not clear. Maduro, well, at least it's clear enough that Maduro said he felt like he was kidnapped. Pollock used the word abduction, and he said it's complicated, it's voluminous in terms of the motions that we're going to be filing, but you can expect that that's where we will be taking this case next once they resume on March 17th. Again, that's to reconnect and to be able to share and update the judge on where they are in terms of sharing documents and discovery. But it was striking to hear Pollock say what he said in court. His client speaks for itself.
Let me go to Laura Jarrett, our senior legal correspondent. And Laura, the semantics matter when it comes to the legal proceedings here. The fact that Maduro used the word, as Sam is talking about, used the language kidnapped, his attorney talking about abduction, that's significant.
It's significant, not surprising, given his position on this, Hallie. But while he may feel it was a kidnapping or an abduction or the like, with some signal of something being unjustified, his attorney is still going to be under the burden to convince a judge down the line, which it sounds like he'll want to do, that his detention is not legally justified, right? And so there will be a number of different arguments to marshal in their favor on that. But this isn't a case that is as if it's routine in any sense of the word, or that this is happening all the time. And so they're going to have to, do what they can to marshal arguments without the benefit of a ton of precedent for similar circumstances. I can't really think of a similar situation. We've talked about Noriega in the past, but it's not as if this is happening on a routine basis so that they'll be able to marshal a bunch of cases in their favor. The Justice Department, on the other hand, has an enormous interest in this case and seeing him put away for a long time. As we've talked about, he was charged back in 2020. They didn't, by any stretch, do anything like this. They didn't make any attempt, at least as far as we know, and reporting has shown, to manage to extract him back then, probably believing that they couldn't. And so now they're going to be working tooth and nail to try to keep him behind bars. But it will be up to that judge to decide down the line, imagining in months from now, whether or not his detention and his arrest was valid, whether or not his rights were valid or were violated in some way. And then, Hallie, of course, there will be appeal after appeal. And so I think, for people who are watching this all play out, during that time, unless his lawyers can figure out a way to get him out, he is going to be behind those bars in Brooklyn. And it is not a pleasant place. This is a place that's been subject to lawsuit after lawsuit for the conditions in there. It is going to be a far cry from the kinds of places that he's been enjoying up until this point.
And you are seeing now those images from earlier today, Maduro leaving that Brooklyn facility, flashing that thumbs up. And of course, those images there of the military operation overnight. There it is again, as we are watching. And just to give you a sense, listen, our helicopter's in the air with our NBC News New York station there. We are tracking the movements of Maduro and his wife as they are being transported here. Let me bring in Richard Engel, because as this is happening, Richard, on the ground for us in the region in Colombia, we have heard Maduro now in court insist he is the president of Venezuela, and similar emphasis from his son, who is speaking at almost the same time that his father was in court to the Venezuelan National Assembly, saying his father is the rightful leader of that country.
He is, and I think it's fair to say that all across Latin America right now, people are watching this. This is designed to send a message, as you've said, and all of your guests have said, and all of the reporting that has been done. This is not just another typical court case. A head of state was taken by U.S. Special Forces, abducted, brought to the United States to face trial. He's now professing his innocence. Some of the imagery here is clearly designed to send fear to the United States opponents in the region, designed to send fear to the leaders of Cuba, designed to send fear to the leader of Colombia, the president of Colombia. President Trump has mentioned them specifically. He said that the president of Colombia better watch his backside, and that the Cubans may be on their last legs, the Cuban regime. So this is a show of force, an intimidating show of force. But you mentioned also several times that this is completely unprecedented. This is unprecedented, but it is it is reminding me of something that I witnessed about 20 years ago. I was standing exactly where, or in the same situation where Sam Brock was right now, and he did an amazing job giving us the play-by-play of what had happened inside that courtroom. I was in a similar courtroom in Iraq when the dictator of that country was brought in for an arraignment. And he said, almost word for word what Nicolas Maduro said today. He said that he is the president of Iraq, that this is illegitimate, that none of this should apply to him. He asked questions. The judge tried to say this is just an arraignment. We just want your name. He started to present his defense. He was stopped from doing that. Almost exactly the same as what we're seeing right now. Ultimately, Saddam Hussein was hanged for war crimes. But his defense team was making this same argument, and he was making the same argument. And he was also trying to flash a smile. I was in the courtroom. He was giving thumbs up. He was trying to show that he was very much in command. So we have been down this road at least one time before in quite a unique historic parallel.
Our Richard Engel on the ground in the region in Colombia. It is just after 1 o'clock here on the East Coast, 10 in the West, and you are looking live now at some of these images from New York City as Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores are on their way back to a detention facility after their arraignment in U.S. federal court just minutes ago. Both of them pleading not guilty to those federal charges of drug trafficking conspiracy, with Maduro saying, "I am president of the Republic of Venezuela." He says, "I am here kidnapped since Saturday." You see his quote here, saying he was captured at his home in Caracas, Venezuela. Obviously, that was the military operation, large scale, by the United States, late Friday into Saturday morning, in which Maduro and Flores were extracted to the United States, flown back to New York, where they have been in that detention facility for the course of the last 48 hours. I want to bring in now Ana Vanessa Herrero, a freelance reporter who is in Caracas. She has been reporting on the ground from inside Venezuela for us. Ana, the last 2-3 hours, what has it been like where you are?
Well, believe it or not, I was expecting, when I imagined this moment, I was expecting people on the streets, people manifesting and saying what they thought of, but really, this is not the case. People are being very cautious. They're staying home. Those who started their regular activities this Monday are just going to work and then back to the supermarket, pharmacy, and then back home. But we do have a strong reaction within the National Assembly of Venezuela. Right now, as you were reporting what was happening inside the courthouse, the National Assembly of Venezuela was, and the state television was broadcasting Nicolás Maduro's guerra, the son of Nicolás Maduro, and he was almost crying. His voice completely broke, saying that we are going to embrace again here in Venezuela. He said that he was kidnapped. He said that the two, Celia Flores and Nicolás Maduro, were kidnapped by the United States, and that Venezuela was not going to be a colony. And then the now president of the National Assembly, the brother of Delcy Rodriguez, the interim president, said that in the place where Celia Flores sit in a chair inside of the National Assembly he left a red flower, trying to symbolize her, because she said there's one missing, and that is Celia Flores. So they put a little flower there just to just symbolize that it was her. So this is very, I mean, there's a lot of information going on. At the same time, he was declared not guilty, and she was being declaring herself not guilty. This was happening in the National Assembly, and all eyes in Caracas are right there, right now.
And what we are looking at, Ana, thank you so much for your reporting. What we are looking at now on the left side of your screen is our Tom Winter reports, the exit of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, where police have appeared to have shut down one of the lanes, and Maduro seems to be traveling by car now to that Brooklyn jail. We're keeping an eye on all of those movements. Let me bring back in Sam Brock, who is outside that Manhattan court, was inside the room as Maduro and his wife were being arraigned. And as you heard Ana just report, Sam, Venezuelans were watching, Venezuelan Americans here in the United States watching as well.
It's so interesting, the idea that there's this mixture of emotions for Venezuelans right now, Hallie. Obviously, the euphoria, the celebration, the unbridled happiness. For those of us that know Venezuelans in our life and are experiencing those joys of thinking that this brutal dictatorship may be over, but also wondering what comes next from this illegitimate government, and are they going to stay in power now that Maduro has been deposed? I will say there certainly seems to be some of that here in terms of just the crowds that have shown up in front of the courthouse, but also, honestly, this acrimony between those who are protesting right now against the idea the U.S. had no right to do this, to invade a sovereign nation and to take its leader and bring him back to the United States and U.S. soil to face justice, versus those who are just so elated at the idea that someone, and I will sort of lay out in the indictment, Maduro is accused of not just coordinating with FARC, right, conspiring with FARC. This was the superseding indictment back in 2020, but also in the last 4 or 5 years, the U.S. government lays out a case where he's working with the Sinaloa cartel, with Tren de Aragua, that you have someone who is essentially running state-sponsored narco-terrorism, and at a time when the 30 million people that live in Venezuela are struggling with rolling blackouts and obtaining basic medical devices and food and water and toilet paper and all the things that we repeatedly report on when there are shortages of in Venezuela, that he was enriching his own pockets and the pockets of his inner circle and the military. And so you are seeing this outpouring of Venezuelan Americans. Certainly that diaspora stretches, I think, as Tom said, from Miami to Madrid, all over the world. We're seeing it here in New York. We're seeing it in Miami. But there is also the realization that there is an intense legal battle that is going to be taking place, and whether or not these motions may be successful on behalf of Maduro's attorneys, that this was an unlawful capture. So all of these different layers of a very complicated subject are all interspersed right now together, as we are just watching this extraordinary first arraignment and now visual trip from Maduro and his wife, Celia, back to MDC, back to the Metropolitan.
No one can find the convoy right now. I'm looking at different feeds, looking around to try to see where the convoy is. They got different sectors here shut off, but there's no, I'm looking at, like, there's 3 different feeds up and I can't find the convoy. I'm trying to look for it. So they have traffic blocked off with different roadways here. So I'm seeing what's going on. What's going on here? Hold on. Attorney.
Regarding what he called a kidnapping?
I think what President Maduro said in court speaks for itself.
And a reminder of what Nicolas Maduro said in court. He said he is a decent man. He said he is the president of Venezuela. He said he was kidnapped from his home in Caracas by the U.S. military. You see it there. I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander, because Peter now continues the clock for the DOJ to lay out the legal proceedings in the face of the arguments that the defense team will put up.
The president himself howling on that very topic just yesterday, saying that Nicolas Maduro and his wife would face the full might of American justice. We heard initially from the Attorney General Pam Bondi on Saturday, moments after we learned about this capture, the arrest of Maduro, that Maduro would face the full wrath of American justice. But this process is going to play out like any other court case would here. But this one, of course, is unique. Still, the Justice Department is putting a lot of resources behind this effort right now, as we've now learned, likely the next court appearance for Maduro to take place just a couple of months from now. There are a lot of questions to be raised with the Justice Department, with the president himself. He has no public events scheduled for today. But, how does the White House respond to this argument from Maduro and his team that this was a military abduction, that he has been kidnapped, language that was initially echoed by the now acting, the interim president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, and her comments immediately following the arrest, basically saying that this was an illegal kidnapping, saying that there was only one president of Venezuela, and in fact saying that that remains Nicolas Maduro at this time. A couple things are striking, and Sam made this point earlier, but I think it is worth repeating, which is just the presence that Maduro had, it appears, in that courtroom there. Clearly, he is a very large man, and he is one who, for more than 13 years, has been on the world stage, succeeding Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. And as a senior White House official said to me, part of that performative nature of his leadership is something that really sort of got underneath the skin of some of those here at the White House, that the members of the inner circle for the president viewed the sort of public displays, the repeated displays of dancing, the rejection.
So I just want to say it appears that he made it back to NYPD One Police Plaza. That's where we're at. And One Police Plaza.
Mocking, in the words of this official, the president, and trying to call the president's bluff. They say, this official says, that the president does not bluff on that matter, but it's very clear that Maduro is not going to go down, in effect, without a fight, not a physical one, but legally. He made very clear his view that he, to this day, remains the president of the country
right.
that he was whisked away from.
Peter, thank you. Questions of legality now raised not just by Maduro's defense team, but by some in Congress as well. And for that, I want to get to our chief Capitol Hill correspondent, Ryan Nobles. Some of them, Ryan, will be briefed here in Washington as lawmakers have returned from their holiday break later on today.
Yeah, this will be the first opportunity for members of Congress to get a firsthand understanding as exactly what the administration's arguments are for going into Venezuela, for removing Maduro and his wife, and not informing Congress or looping them in or asking for authorization as a result. At 5:30 tonight, here in Washington, a group of high-level administration officials, including the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, will all brief the Gang of Eight, which is the group of leaders, both Republican and Democrat, of the key committees of jurisdiction and the leadership of both the House and Senate. Now, we don't expect that when they come out of this meeting that they'll give us too much information as to what was told, as it will be a classified briefing. But we should get some sense of whether or not these members of Congress are comfortable with the way that this process has played itself out. Some Democrats have outright called it illegal. They have forecasted the possibility of a quagmire that the United States could get itself involved in. Hallie, we should learn a lot more about what Congress thinks about this intervention here over the next couple of days now that they're back here in Washington.
Ryan Nobles, thank you. I want to bring in our moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker, who is joining us now. And Kristen, there is the legal component of this. There is the political component of this. There is the foreign policy component of this, with a lot on the line for the Trump administration.
This is arguably the biggest foreign policy test yet for President Trump in this second administration. Hallie, we're getting our first little snapshot of how the public views this. The Washington Post took a poll. I want to stress this was a snap poll taken in the days and hours after Nicolas Maduro was seized from Venezuela. But some really fascinating findings. 42% disapprove of sending the U.S. military into Venezuela to capture Nicolas Maduro. 40% approve, okay? So pretty divided evenly there, Hallie. 18% say they're unsure. That's expected given the nature of this snap poll. But notably, 63% say President Trump should have notified Congress. So that really speaks to the point that Ryan was making. I think that's part of where this argument is going to go. What, if any, role should Congress play now, particularly, Hallie, particularly if President Trump, if the Trump administration decides to take future action? And then, of course, we'll watch the MAGA base very closely. Right now, largely unified behind him. But if this drags out, that could change. Hallie.
Kristen Welker, thank you very much for that. Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores on their way back to that Brooklyn detention facility, capping a stunning 48 hours with their not guilty pleas in U.S. federal court and setting the stage for what is sure to be a bruising legal battle ahead, perhaps a political one for President Trump. That concludes our coverage. We'll return you now to NBC News Daily.
All right, hold on. Let's see. I got something else. We're trying to understand where he's at. We're going to watch him get into a helicopter, and we're going to review and everything like that. So I'm going to put up another feed here. We're going around all the networks. They're all trying to track this guy down.
New York. So a live look there, an aerial view as we continue to follow this. And we are just going to hang on these live looks. We have several different angles for you. It does look like this helicopter now maybe zooming into something else. So let's just take a look at it. So this is just a different perspective. You can see on the right-hand side of your screen, it's a little hard to tell, but it does look like perhaps we are watching that motorcade, and it might be on the upper right-hand side. We do see a lot of flashing lights right here, so we're just going to hang on this. It's a little unclear exactly where that motorcade is. It does look like the helicopter also trying to search for that right now as we continue to follow the process after the court proceedings have wrapped up now, Maduro. And it does look like the helicopter has found that transportation. We're just going to wait. We do see some of the police vehicles with their flashing lights now as the helicopter seems to be focusing in on this particular route as Maduro and his wife right now are being transported back to the detention center in Brooklyn. So we're just going to stay on this live look. We want you to watch all of it unfold with no editing. This is as it is happening in real time as we continue to follow all of these different looks and vantage points. So happening right now, Maduro and his wife are en route back to prison after their court proceedings. They both have pleaded not guilty to the charges against them, maintaining their innocence, and also both Maduro and his wife stating that they are the rightful leaders of their country. Maduro saying to the judge, quote, "I am a decent man, the president of my country," and his wife, Celia Flores, also stating that she maintains that she is the first lady of Venezuela. So we are expecting at some point to see Maduro and possibly his wife exit these vehicles and make their way onto a helicopter as they will be transported back to the detention center. So right now it's a little hard to tell exactly where that motorcade is. As you can imagine, this is New York City, so a lot of traffic happening right now. The helicopter trying to find perhaps where that motorcade is among these roads right here. And we also have another look. This is from the ground, just to give you a different perspective, continuing very heavy police presence along this route. So we did want to share that with you here as well. And we do have another look that we wanted to share with you also from the ground. This is just another vantage point. As you can see, this is near exit 1, the Battery Park. So we're going to just continue to share these with you. Now, sometimes these shots do drop out, as you can imagine, but we do have a variety of different perspectives that we are going to continue to dip into should one go out. And, you know, I'm just keeping a very close eye. It does look like the helicopter shot, at least one of them, is now out, but we're going to bring that up as soon as we can. And of course, bring you also continuing reaction from around the world as well. And speaking of reaction, as we do await a look of Maduro, I do want to head to Britain as the Foreign Minister, Yvette Cooper, is making a statement on Venezuela. And we're just going to pop that up right now as we continue to listen in.
Corrupt links involved Iran, with Hezbollah increasingly present in recent years, as well as malign support from Russia. And a regime which has facilitated illicit finance, sanctions evasion, and organized criminal activity, including narcotics trafficking and illegal gold trading. That undermines the security of the whole region, including UK overseas territories, as well as the United States and other regional partners. The country has been driven into economic ruin with an 80% drop in their GDP in a decade. Over 8 million people have left, causing instability elsewhere in the region. And we have seen Maduro's regime systematically dismantle democratic institutions, silencing dissent and weaponizing state resources to maintain power through fear and corruption. The International Criminal Court has opened an investigation into possible crimes against humanity following reports of hundreds of extrajudicial killings, including at the hands of Venezuela's security services and paramilitary groups under the regime's command. And UN investigators have repeatedly reported a pattern of arbitrary detentions, tortures, and killings. In July 2024 presidential election, millions of Venezuelans voted, but the official results have never been published. The opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, was banned by Maduro from standing. International observers cited basic failures of election integrity, and independent tallies covering 80% of polling stations showed a clear victory for Edmundo Gonzalez, and yet Maduro claimed victory. And most recently in October, the UN independent fact-finding mission reported on state security forces using firearms against protesters after the elections 18 months ago, where 25 people died. Gonzalez has been forced to leave the country and claim political asylum in Spain. Machado was forced into hiding for her own safety and had to be spirited out of the country to receive her Nobel Peace Prize in Norway last month. These are the hallmarks of a regime that clings to power through fear, coercion, and violence, not through democratic consent. And that is why, as the Prime Minister said on Saturday, we can shed no tears for the end of Maduro's rule. Let me turn to UK policy. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, the UK has long been an advocate for a democratic Venezuela and a vocal critic of the Maduro regime. Since 2019, successive UK governments have refused to recognise the regime. Through the G7, the UN, with partners and directly, we have continued to call out the Maduro regime and its appalling human rights violations. We have also, in some areas, taken a different policy approach to some of our allies. Our other Five Eyes partners have closed their embassies, but we have maintained our diplomatic mission in Caracas at a much more senior level than many of our partners, and seeking dialogue, sustaining direct contact with the opposition, supporting Venezuelan civil society, and advocating for British interests. A year ago, around Maduro's inauguration, the UK acted alongside partners and announced a wave of new sanctions. We targeted 15 individuals, including judges, senior ranking officials in Maduro's regime, responsible for undermining democracy, the rule of law, and human rights violations. And we have imposed sanctions on individuals, but not on sectors of the economy. And we have not supported or been involved in blockades or strikes against drug boats. We have continued to directly promote the interests of the British Overseas Territories, who need to see stability in the region. And of course, throughout, we have promoted and maintained support for international law. Commitment to international law, as the Prime Minister set out on Saturday, is immensely important to this government. Those principles guide the decisions that we make and the actions we take as part of Britain's foreign policy. That commitment to international law is part of our values. It's also strongly in the UK's national interest. And our manifesto talked about a foreign policy that is progressive and that is also realistic, engaging with the world as we find it in the interests of UK security, prosperity, and our values. That means upholding international law and defending democracy, and it means confronting the complex, evolving, and hybrid threats that we and our allies face in the world today. And those principles and values also guide the conversations that we have with our allies across a range of issues where we agree and disagree. And in my discussions with Secretary Rubio, I raised the importance of complying with international law, and we will continue to urge all partners to do so at every stage. It is, of course, for the US to set out the legal basis for their actions, and the UN Security Council is discussing Venezuela this afternoon. These issues will continue to be matters for international discussion. I discussed with Secretary Rubio what should happen next, and our continued commitment to a transition to a peaceful and stable democracy. Our collective immediate focus must be on avoiding any deterioration in Venezuela into further instability, criminality, repression, or violence. That would be deeply damaging for the people of Venezuela, our own overseas territories, our allies, and in the US and other regional partners. The UK has long been clear that the leadership of Venezuela must reflect the will of the Venezuelan people. So the international community must come together to help achieve a peaceful transition to a democratic government that respects the rights and will of its people. That must mean action on the economic crisis, the release of political prisoners, the return of opposition politicians, an end to political repression, respect for human rights, and plans for the holding of free and fair elections. And I urge the acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, to take these steps forward because the people of Venezuela have a right to decide their own future. The US Secretary of State and I discussed the particular role that the UK can play to support a peaceful democratic transition and stability. Because drawing on our embassy in Caracas and on the work that we have done over many years to build up relationships and dialogue with Venezuelan opposition parties and with the current authorities and regime, and of course, our relationship with the US. To that end, I have also spoken today with Venezuelan opposition leader, Corina Machado, and her unwavering fight for democracy, human rights, and the rule of law in Venezuela and against oppression is inspirational, and we will keep in touch over the days and weeks ahead. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me turn briefly to another matter. The House will have seen recent comments from the United States and from Denmark regarding Greenland. Let me be very clear on the UK position. Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Our close European partners, our long-standing NATO allies, and all our countries work closely together on security issues and will always do so. The future of Greenland is a matter for the Greenlanders and Danes and no one else. I commend this statement to the House.
We were listening there to British Foreign Minister Cooper on Venezuela and also some brief statements on Greenland as we are taking a live aerial view as the motorcade transporting Maduro and his wife are now right now on this leg of the journey after they appeared in court pleading not guilty to all charges against them. We are going to continue to follow this and, of course, bring you any live looks of Maduro as he is now headed back to Brooklyn, where he is being housed in the Metropolitan Detention Center. I'm Stephanie Quinn. You are watching live now from Fox. We're going to step away for a break, and after that, Mike Page will continue our coverage. We'll be right back.
All right, stand by. I'm going to put the river because they're at Battery Park, I believe, on the river there, and I'm going to get this up here. The AP has a feed up. They're waiting for Maduro. I don't know where he's at. I don't know why it's taking so long. I don't know where he's at. I don't know where he's at, but waiting so long. We'll hold it down here. Oh, their feed went off. I don't know where what happened there. But nope, they're going back to the park. think maybe he went to the DEA or something. Because I don't know what happened to him. Everyone's looking for him. They haven't seen him. All right, so they're waiting for him to come back. So I was looking into some things here. Oh, and the UN Security Council is going too. That they're done there. Another crazy day. Come on in, folks. There are also it appears to be some protesters on the court here, but there was some clashes between pro Maduro and anti Maduro at the courthouse. So it wasn't just pro Maduro people. This is live outside the MDC. So they took it to the MDC. No indication whether he returned or not, because the convoy basically just vanished and the media lost it. They lost it. I don't know if they do a fake out or what. where they literally lost it. So, you know, he went in there pretty defined. You know, I'm the president of, I am a decent man. I am the president of Venezuela. We'll see if we can get some interviews from his attorney. It's so strange because it's like we almost like don't know where he went. I think they took him somewhere else. I think they took him maybe to like the DEA or some other place. They didn't take him here yet, and they didn't go down there and get on the chopper. They're somewhere, and I'm trying to figure out where they could be. Which is pretty wild and crazy. It's almost like, where's Maduro? Where is he? What happened to him? Where'd he go? Because the way they have it is as if he didn't like, I don't know, it's strange. So this story is far from over. I'm also monitoring a situation. A crazy wackadoodle tried to break into JD Vance's home and busted out his windows in Ohio. We're going to do a story on this guy pretty soon. I just saw that pop up. I've been looking into it. It looks like a transgender. A transgender tried to break into JD Vance. This stuff's getting crazy. Political violence. Some crazy person tried to break into JD Vance's home. Family home. Unbelievable. Looking into that. A guy named William DeFore, aka Julia DeFore. Crazy stuff. All right, so we're still live out here. We're gonna keep it here just to see what's going on, and we're not gonna end yet. We'll just see what's up and what's going on. After P. Diddy, I do not trust the New York judicial system. Hopefully, it's not a Biden-Obama judge. This has come from J. Barbola 1. I think it was more about Miriam Comey that handled Diddy's case, because the one thing I about Diddy's case that shocked me was no one else was on a RICO indictment. RICO is similar to like you would have here with a list of co-defendants. Diddy didn't even have co-defendants. It was just single-handedly. So I was perplexed by that, of how you could bring a RICO case against somebody without any co-defendants on there. But they did it with Diddy, and look what happened to Diddy. Ultimately, he was convicted of some crime, serving 50-month sentence. But usually with the RICO cases and everything like that, you got to list them. Maybe SDNY redeemed themselves. I mean, that's why they got rid of Comey. That could be part of it too. Pretty insanity, folks. Another big story that's been popping up is Minnesota governor's not seeking re-election, Tim Walz. So I thought that was interesting too. After a YouTuber went up to Minnesota, and some people believe the YouTuber, some people don't. Says that there's massive amount of fraud at the daycare centers and facilities, and Tim Walz knew about it, and he's up in his eyeballs in it. Now suddenly Tim Walz says today that he's not seeking re-election. So did a YouTuber take him down? Did a YouTuber, a 23-year-old by the name of Nick Shirley, and I like Nick Shirley. I never met Nick Shirley, but Nick Shirley, me and him did a lot of the border stuff. He travels. He's like the world, where's Waldo? I mean, I think he's the next pretty big thing coming out there, Nick Shirley, and he's everywhere. He just pops up, and he did his work. I'm worried about that guy's safety, because sometimes he goes in the mix, he confronts people and goes in there, even though he's just talking, he's peaceful. There are people hostile at him, and I'm very concerned for his safety. But he goes up there and goes into Minnesota, and allegedly there was fraud involved. Now, it does appear like these daycare centers are collecting in millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they're operating under shady pretenses. When I say shady pretenses, I'm like, doors are all blacked out, no children are going there, you can't even spell the name of the business right. Shady people running these businesses, collecting money, and the business owners being very hostile. Makes you wonder, there must be something going on here. Must be something going on, some sort of scheme or whatnot. So we went out and blew that wide open. And now it's opened up a can of worms, because like other daycares across the country, like in Columbus, in reference to Somali daycare, and other locations, Philadelphia, they're looking into it. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. I don't know if anyone's going to get indicted out of that. I mean, obviously they got the indicted under the food programs up there. Crazy stuff. But we got our eyes on a lot of things on the channel. We're going to do more boots on the ground ourselves coming, this year soon. And that will include maybe covering these stories in person, whatever like that. But I am very worried about safety. Safety is the top priority here. When you report the truth, or you report the people that you're reporting on, if you put a spotlight to someone, they don't like it. They come at you. They come at you very hostile. I mean, I got it pretty good when I was at the border with some of these NGOs and some of these sympathizers coming at me and attacking me and coming at me pretty hard just for filming. People don't like people filming what's going on in the streets. But you got that. We got this. We got the Venezuela stuff that we will continue to talk about. Iran, definitely paying attention to Iran, with the situation with Iran. I really think the Ayatollah is out on his way out. The whole regime collapse. Cuba, Colombia, Mexico, deportations. I'd like to go back down to the southern border and see if it's really secure or not. Like they say like hardly anyone is crossing anymore. But I know a lot of those hot spots, particularly just west of El Paso in Santa Teresa, Sunland Park, New Mexico. I still think they're coming across like ninjas. South of Yuma, Arizona, down there, long walls around there. I just feel like they're coming across still. But gotaways, more of like a gotaways, not like similar to what we've been seeing over the years, where they just surrender to Border Patrol. Border Patrol rounds them up. They just claim they're anybody, because most of the countries they're coming from don't cooperate with Interpol or NCIC, and they stay. I think anyone that's crossing into the southern border now would be gotaways that specifically just trying to sneak in. They're just like, they just take the risk. They're like, they should be noticed. Even if you sneak in on a gotaway, there's a very good chance that you could be sent to CCOT. Is it worth it? Is it worth going to CCOT just by sneaking in the United States? I wouldn't do it. We're live outside the Metropolitan Detention Center here. I don't know if we're going to see any more action. Kind of just seeing if there's any more feeds going up. They do have. Here, we'll go to the Colombia-Venezuela border here. We'll check it out here and just see what's going on. They got a live feed still up there at this border. They've been out here for days right here in this location. This is the port of entry, or the border between Colombia and Venezuela. Now, people fear if, the country of Venezuela gets more destabilized, then more mass exodus of people coming across. They already got their tents and everything set up. More people will be coming across the border and sneaking across, but I don't even think the border's secure with Colombia. So this is just one of many spots people just cross in. I don't think Colombia necessarily secures their border all like that. So it's a live look. They got the Colombian military. Now, Colombia could be the next target. Colombian president said a couple weeks ago that they're blowing up all the cocaine plants every day. I don't know if the Trump administration believes them or not. There could be a conflict going on with Colombia very, very soon, possibly. Or some sort of guerrilla warfare, Colombian FARC. I don't know. ELN. Colombia FARC, ELN. Sort of deal. So Maduro made it to court. I guess he goes back to court March 17th. Could be something in between. He's claiming he has medical issues. That will be interesting. Also, his wife is claiming she got busted ribs. With all the people coming in. They're probably engaged in commerce like this all the time and just going back and forth, back and forth. Here, probably all the time. We'll keep it here and just see what's going on. We're just monitoring what's going on. I'm seeing what else. You know what's crazy, which is very good though? No crazy mass shootings over the weekend, thank God. That's like quietness. That's a little relief for us. There's things going on and no one's paying attention because of these major stories. Live look outside the Venezuela Colombia border. I don't know where they took Maduro. They took him somewhere. I don't think he made it back to the NBC. Let me look around here on Twitter and see what they're saying about his convoy. Like, it just vanished. Military. We were tracking the convoy, and the convoy just went, and it's gone. UN Security Council was interesting too. We watched most of it. And what about the second wave of attack that might happen? Is it going to happen or not? Trump calls out Colombia's Petro, says Cuba's ready to fall. Here's some other reports that are coming out. I'll just turn this down. Some reports that are coming out are saying U.S. consider reopening the embassy in Venezuela. The U.S. is considering reopening its embassy in Venezuela, according to a senior State Department official. As President Trump said, we are making preparations to allow for a reopening should the president make that decision. The embassy has been closed since March of 2019, when the State Department withdrew all diplomatic personnel in Caracas. So they're considering reopening up the American embassy. Interesting. Maduro's son addresses the Venezuelan legislature. Nicolas Maduro's son gave an impassioned speech to Venezuelan lawmakers on Monday. He goes on to say, if we normalize the kidnapping of a head of state, no country is safe, he says. He is a member of the Venezuelan National Assembly, said Venezuela isn't fighting for its land or its rights, but for its well-being and the well-being of the entire human existence. In a message to Maduro, he said, your country is in good hands, father, and soon will hug in Venezuela. And he was met with applause by the National Assembly. Mike Waltz, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, says that the U.S. is not occupying Venezuela. This was a law enforcement operation in furtherance of lawful indictments that have existed for decades. The United States arrested a narco trafficker who is now going to stand trial in the United States in accordance with the rule of law for the crimes he committed against people for the last 15 years. Waltz also said that the U.S. would not allow the Western Hemisphere to be used as a base of operation for our nation's adversaries and competitors and rivals of the United States. The U.S. ambassador to the UN also said that President Donald Trump offered Nicolas Maduro multiple off-ramps. What's this guy doing? Oh, that's a cameraman with their thing for the lighting. That's a reporter. Offered Maduro multiple off-ramps and gave diplomacy a chance. He tried to de-escalate. Maduro refused to take them. President Trump made it clear that narco-terrorism must stop, and yet it continued. The United States will not waver to our actions to protect Americans from narco-terrorism and seeks peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela. Interesting. So as we know, what's this? 7 minutes ago, CNN reports Delcy Rodriguez will be sworn in Monday as acting president, according to Maduro's brother. According to her brother. Delcy Rodriguez will be formally sworn in on Monday as acting president of Venezuela, according to her brother, National Assembly President George Rodriguez. They're all brothers, and they're all like brothers, the brothers and sons. They're all brothers and sons. National Assembly President George Rodriguez, the National Assembly, is the brother of Delcy Rodriguez. What is that called? Family. Families run everything. Families run everything. Crazy. The ceremony is going to take place. Nepotism, yeah. So because basically it's Maduro's son, speaks to the National Assembly, and Delcy Rodriguez, his brother, is the National Assembly president. And you really think Delcy Rodriguez would work with the Trump administration? People say it's a mafia. It's a mafia that took over Venezuela. You know what I find interesting, though, is you got the United States, and you have the talks of Greenland. We'll just put Greenland on this side. You got the United States, you got Greenland above here, and you got Venezuela down there. And if you look on the map, it's very, very interesting where you got the United States placed, and then you have Greenland to the north, and you have Venezuela. It's almost like they're like the points of shield on the map. If you look in the Western Hemisphere, like Venezuela is right there at the corner of South America, and then Greenland to the north. And they're talking about, taking Greenland and Venezuela. It's almost like a shield of protection. Now, personally, if you look on the map, you see Venezuela and Colombia as basically the countries there right before you get into Central America. And I think what the Trump administration's thinking is here is get leaders that are, working in cooperation with the United States, which means a new Colombian leader and a new Venezuela leader, to get that access to Central America through those countries, and so no one else can come up and wave up through Central America through the Darien Gap, just to cut off that access. I personally also think that, northern Mexico is going to be addressed with the cartels smuggling, the cartels in northern Mexico, which, by the way, the president has said basically is the cartels run Mexico. They have a president, but she's being controlled by the cartels or intimidated by the cartels. So are we just going to have like an entire Western Hemisphere in the United States, from Canada eventually? I mean, there was even trolling talk about a year ago of Canada joining the United States. You heard it. Is that even possible? Is that something that we might see in the future? The United States, Canada becomes the 51st state. Greenland gets taken from Denmark. United States controls all the way up to the top of the Arctic, goes all the way down, controls northern Mexico. You got all these Central American countries and new leaders that support America, and then you take out these dictators in their eyes of these countries, like the last remaining ones, the remaining few, Cuba, Colombia, even Mexico, I guess, and Venezuela, and just make it an entire Western Hemisphere of the United States, or these little like colonial, like is Trump following the blueprint of what the British did 200 years ago by going to other places and just colonizing these places? Is that what's happening here? I know some people in the chat are saying America is a joke. America, Trump is weak. America's joke. But why do people think that? I'm just curious why you think that. Because, I mean, what I've seen in this country in the last year, just the last year, I mean, we've never really seen in our lifetime. I mean, we literally went in there with stealth and bombed Iran and put them into their place. And now, taking out some of their nuclear capabilities, I don't think it's all, or disrupting it, taking them back to the Stone Age in nuclear proliferation. Look what's happening to Iran. Iran has never recovered from that. Matter of fact, Iran is even worse off. And their country is literally falling apart. You have what just happened in Venezuela, which I don't think any country could ever pull off. So how does that make the Trump administration weak? And again, I'm not saying with pom-pom saying Trump administration. I'm just asking all of you, It seems like they mean serious business here and they have bigger plans here. Or do they not have plans? And this is going to turn into an Iraq mess. Is it the same as what would happen in the Middle East with Afghanistan and Iraq? My observation of, the Trump administration and what they're doing, I mean, it's that they mean business. They mean serious business here. Just on foreign policy, because they haven't took no L on foreign policy. I mean, I know that Trump said at the time he's going to stop the war with Ukraine and Russia, and it's still going. Still going. I mean, he said, but he also said that, if he was president, still past 2020, Putin would have never done what he did. What's happening here? Are we seeing changes in our world? Like world dominance changes, and the weak are getting destroyed, or the rogue terrorists, weak, smaller nations are just getting gobbled up. Is this like a game of, like the game of war? You're just going in and going in, going in. Are we headed for a clash with Russia? Are we headed for a clash with China? Those are the only people that could really. UN ain't going to go. UN is not going to go against the United States. You know that. Many UN people in the UN, many countries within the UN support the United States. So, there's some that don't would go against, or some that play both sides of the fence, kind of like moderate. UK would never go against the United States. I mean, doesn't the United States for years the biggest beneficiary to NATO, provided them the most money and resources? But what does this really lead to? World War III? Would China really risk fighting the U.S. over Venezuela? Russia start a war with the United States over Venezuela? I mean, think about this. Russia really didn't do nothing to the United States when over the last 4 years, the United States was sending money to Ukraine. That's indirectly supporting Ukraine, the United States, under the last administration. I mean, what did Russia do about it to the United States? Nothing. They didn't do nothing. What did they do? We didn't get nuked. There was no nukes. Can Russia really beat Ukraine? It's another story. I mean, we've been hearing prior to this incident, we've been hearing the deal is about to be made. I mean, I remember Trump was speaking with a bunch of those podcasters and journalists over the Antifa violence, the Antifa roundtable, and, Marco Rubio slips Trump the note. Trump gets the note, says a deal might be made, stop the war with Ukraine. It's not stopped. What's the deal? If that stops, I mean, Russia gets land east of Ukraine, and Ukraine doesn't join NATO, and that'll win for Russia. But we're still here with that. But are we going to get involved with that? I don't think so. The administration's pretty much said we're not getting involved with that conflict. Let them duke it out. But we're not going to fund anybody. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, there's people that say we should. I think this administration's objective is to, it just seems like oil is part of this, and also narco and drugs. By the way, speaking of oil, what's the stock market today? What's the stock market right now? What's the Dow Jones right now? Dow Jones Industrial today. Stock market. Oh my goodness. Stock market is up 800 points today. Stock market is up 800 points, folks. This is the first time I paid attention to this. You heard all weekend, oil stocks are going up. Stock market is up 800 points. As you know, Fed cut rates, third time? Numerous rate cuts. Stock market, the economy is booming. If you believe the stock market is a driver of the economy, a lot of people think the stock market's mostly AI, NVIDIA. Stock market is up 1.65%. Closing in, it's getting close to 50,000 points. Look at this. Dow Jones today. Imagine that. Major index surge as oil stocks soar on Maduro's capture. Oil stocks. What did Trump say? They said Americans going to go in there. American oil companies are going to go in there and drill, baby, drill. On Venezuela's soil. Drill, baby, drill. Major stock index soared Monday with the Dow Jones Industrial Average hitting an all-time high. People are like, there's some activity going on in New York. Let me see. I'm going to go back to New York. Let's see what's going on. Let's see. What's going on in New York? This is the protesters. We're just using some of these as backdrops. This is live, or it's reported as live. So, these people have confidence in the economy because of this. Sometimes when we get into wars and conflicts, guess what happens to the stock market? Pew! Sometimes it goes up too. Defense contracting companies, Halliburton, Raytheon. Where are the other ones? We always heard about war profiting, military equipment. Stock market soaring to literally an all-time high. People are like $1 gas soon. Oh yeah, what is the oil prices? But yeah, the stock market. Well, they say West Texas Intermediate futures, the U.S. crude oil benchmark rose 1.7% to $58.30 a barrel. Chevron stock is 6% pace. 6% to the pace of the Dow. Look at this, trucks coming through. What's this? This is a reporter, so-and-so, so-and-so. Look at the trucks are coming through Venezuela. Let me see. Turn it up a little bit. Trucks are coming through. UK is still making statements on Venezuela. Delcy Rodriguez sworn in as acting president. So breaking news, they're saying that Delcy Rodriguez has just been sworn in as acting president. The oath of office was administered Monday afternoon by her brother, George Rodriguez. So, yeah, technically this morning when Maduro was in court saying, I am the president, he can't say that anymore. He can't say he's the president of Venezuela anymore because she is the acting president right now. I am the acting president. She was sworn in. Let me see if I can find a clip of that. I'm sure they televised that, right? What do they do? What do they put their hand on? They put their hand on something when that happens? Put their hand on the Bible? I haven't seen no clips of that. I'm sure that was televised in some aspect. We're live look at the Venezuela-Colombian border. See if there's anything else I can share with y'all. Seeing if there's any breakouts of anything. Second wave of attacks. The second wave. Second wave. Nah, all the networks kind of bounced. What's this? I guess they're protesting in the streets of UK. In support. Very, very interesting. All right, with that being said, I'm going to sign off. Blow this up here. He gives the thumbs up for sure. Crazy. I'm going to go monitor the JD Vance guy. So I'm going to do a deep dive on that guy or girl, whoever that is.